pulled into the parking lot in my apartment, go inside, getting unpacked. Little kid comes running down the hallway. Your car's on fire. It's like, are you fucking serious? My name is Mike Swenson. I'm a singer-songwriter and AVIT guy here in Bismarck, North Dakota. Happy to be here and excited to see what comes of it.
General Motors Terex 3315B, one of the world's heaviest trucks, 234,000 pounds, empty. Chevy's half-ton four-wheel drive pickup, equipped with a standard six-cylinder engine that's more powerful than you might suspect. Can it pull the Terex? Let's watch. This six-cylinder Chevy has available automatic transmission, full-time four-wheel drive, and 411 rear axle. The six-cylinder Chevy pickup, amazingly powerful. Chevy trucks, built to stay tough.
My first car was a 1979 Chevy pickup. Inherited from my grandfather when he passed away in 94. And the rule was that my grandparents or my parents were not going to buy me a vehicle. I'm the youngest of six. And more or less it was whatever one you could get running at the farm is what I could have. And that was the first one that started. And and it came back to Bismarck with me.
So how long did you have that then?
I drove that through high school, or so from 8th grade until high school. And then my senior year, I ended up, had a fun, very scary incident in that pickup with going down 26th Street. Master cylinder blew out, so brake pedal hit the floor, and heading south on 26 for those listening, that is a pretty steep hill. And I flew down 26 and I went through the intersection at Rosser and I went through the intersection on Main.
Are you just like, oh, fuck.
I'm going to die. And yeah, I made it down that big hill past the railroad tracks. Finally, where the Bobcat parking lot is now, that was, there was still grass and stuff. I was able to finally.
Oh, okay. You just pulled off.
Pull over. And as I had it in neutral the whole way, and I just remember walking back, calling my dad and like, I don't think I'm going to drive this anymore. And, thankfully, the one thing that saved my ass is that there was a police officer going opposite way on Main, and he saw me flying down and thankfully kind of caught eye, like, arms in the air, like, dude, I'm not doing this on purpose, man. Like, I am not, it's like, so he got behind me right away, and that helped. And I mean, it was not a fun situation, and I mean, thankfully nobody hurt. But after that, ended up retired that guy back up to the ranch, and then took my dad's 93 Dodge Ram pickup for the remainder of senior year, and then graduated high school, and then bought my motorcycle, and then that was the first car. And then
motorcycle, huh?
Ended up I found an 86 Harley Sportster.
Oh, cool.
Over in Mandan. And
how old were you?
So that would have been 98. So I was 18, and then so I was 12 years old by then, and red and white, and just Sportster 883, and I absolutely loved that thing. I left North Dakota, moved down to Dallas, Texas, and pretty much the whole time I lived down there, that's all I had was my motorcycle. And then ended up having my brother had been living in Colorado, gifted me I want to say it was a Dodge Sundance, maybe? It was I forget what the name of it was. It was just a tiny little four-door little beater mobile. And then I had that for like 3 months, and then I stupidly, like I think many of us in those days, it's like ended up getting roped into a new vehicle. Ended up buying a Jeep Cherokee that I got absolutely hosed on, it was probably, 11% interest or something, 12% interest, and, $425 a month payment and then insurance. And it's like, yeah, I got a good job. I can afford this. And then it was like, and then that Jeep was a disaster. It was an absolute, ended up, after I'd moved back up to Minnesota, or more or less when I found that I was moving back up to Minnesota, I ended up selling off my motorcycle, driving that back to Minneapolis. And then not too long after, ended up blowing the transfer case out on I-94 on my way back, coming back to, and just outside Alexandria, and doing 75, and just the entire transfer case, everything just exploded.
Jesus.
And it was like, cool. I think I maybe put 3,000 miles on that thing.
Oh no!
So I was like, cool.
Cool.
I'd made 4 payments on it.
Yeah.
It's like, went through that whole deal, and then that was another kind of slap. And then ultimately, the Jeep Cherokee turned into an '86 Olds Calais that an ex-girlfriend had given me. We had been living together, and some bad shit went down, and she left me the car that she had inherited, I think, from her grandparents. And, it was like, well, okay. And that car lasted about 6 months. And then it's like, I'm going back to walking. It was like, did not have much luck, man. Me and vehicles, I had after that, wasn't too long, I want to say it would have been 06, 07, had a Grand Marquis, V8, super sweet, highway patrol Grand Marquis. Literally came back to Bismarck. My mom had been driving it for a while, and it was like, okay, yep, I forgot, I rode with a buddy or whatever back here. Like, okay, I'm gonna get this car. Drove it back to Minneapolis, pulled into the parking lot in my apartment. Go inside, getting unpacked. Little kid comes running down the hallway. Your car's on fire! It's like, are you fucking serious? Go outside. Yeah, freaking up in flames. The power steering housing had blown out, and so it was spraying the engine with power steering fluid. And odds are it had been probably smoking, the whole time I was driving, and I didn't notice. It was blowing hard. And then it's like, it wasn't smoking when I turned it off, and then it's like, so it was like, cool, and then it was so laughable, I'll get calling my folks again, like, you never guess what happened. And then that guy turned into I ended up finding a 96 Dodge Caravan, and then that was my tour mobile and my house for a little while. And my, that was probably the most reliable vehicle I'd owned. And then ultimately lost that one to rabbits that decided to eat out the electrical housing.
Oh, motherfucker.
So, it was just like, okay, this is just, it's been that way, and here I am now, like, 2009, 2010, I ended up taking my dad's, after he had passed away, an 04 Silverado, and that thing was great. I got 100,000 miles out of that guy, and then ultimately traded that, which was funny because this is a couple years ago now. Traded that car, or finally sold the truck. Finally had a couple bucks in the bank again. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go get a newer vehicle. Gonna finally upgrade, and I got a 2016. Or it was a 2015 Silverado 2500, and got about 150 miles out of it, and the engine blew.
Jesus.
And then so I ended up, so that truck went in. Thankfully, more or less the dealership, well, sorry, nothing we can do for you, as is. Thankfully found another dude here in town that was really cool with me, and he bought the truck out for me. And he's like, no problem. He's like, I can put a new engine in it and still make money. So ended up swapping that pickup for a Chevy Malibu, which I lost last summer in the flash flood here, after up on 43rd Street. And then, so now I'm driving a Chevy Impala 2012. So I still ended up with a vehicle more than 10 years old.
Yeah.
But this one's, it's like so far so good. I'm knocking on wood. God damn it. I made it through winter, and it's like my wife and I we just laugh because like she's had 2 cars in the last 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
No problem. No
Yeah.
problem.
Does she even let you drive them?
Right. It's like, well, funny thing on hers, we got a Hyundai Tucson 2017, and we just went through, that was last year. And that was funny. So when I lost the Malibu to the flood, her engine went to hell. And thankfully, dealership took care of it. Hyundai, good warranty. We were able to get all the paperwork of, we were diligent about that since we bought it.
Oh, yeah, right.
And it was
on.
it's like, here's the oil changes. We've had 0 mechanical issues with this vehicle. And then all of a sudden it was just losing oil like crazy, burning oil like crazy. And yeah, brought it in. And then they found it was like, yeah, apparently that main seal had blown out or dissolved. And then there was a recall, and then, it was like 2 months, but that had happened like 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks after I lost my car, the flood, and then all of a sudden hers went to hell. And then it was like, okay, but we lucked out on that. They were really cool about, taking care of it, and so far so good, knock on wood. And most importantly, hers is paid off. We have that thing. That is the first vehicle to be 100% paid for now in the last 20 years. It's like,
good Lord, dude.
So it's been comical, man.
I'm glad you can laugh at it and you're not here shaking with PTSD.
Right. Because it really is. And then I've had to learn to laugh it off. And I mean, granted, that is a very long-winded way of saying my first car, but I have not, I've yet, outside, it's like my Dodge Caravan, that was 10 whatever years ago, that thing was amazing. That was like the first vehicle I had, I guess, owned, that actually got to drive and actually got to know the vehicle. And, there's something about that when you can finally sink in and you can, that, it's like, oh, you hear that squeak or that knock or that. And it's like, oh, yep, I know that's just the, the compressor doing its thing. I know that it's just a bad spring in the, in the window controller or something, and it's like my Impala now, I'm like, I think I got a CV joint that just started knocking this week. I'm like, don't you fucking dare. Like, come on. It's like, that is not what I need right now. But wife, I've told her more than once over the last few years, I'm just going back to a motorcycle. She doesn't like that idea. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, our kid's old enough now. She's big enough. She can get a sidecar, or I can get a, I'm like, just like, hell no. I'm like, come on, it's like she wants me to get one.
You don't see those often enough,
right? I mean, I've always joked about, if I had the time and the money, and I don't know the dude's name. When I used to work at a place here in town, I used to service some of his vehicles, and you see him around. He's got his big, beautiful white dog, big old floof, whatever, not a Samoyed or whatever they're called, but you'll see him. He drives like a little white convertible around town, and his dog's always in the passenger with the goggles on.
Oh, really?
And he's got some older motorcycles and stuff too. I've seen him around, and I'm like, that's exactly like if I could get my dog to actually do anything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, are those? I've seen dogs with goggles on in convertibles or in the sidecars.
Yeah.
Do they make those for dogs, or is it just human goggles that they?
I'm sure there's some. I guess I've never researched, but I think there are companies.
And is there
that
a purpose, or is it just look cool?
Yeah, I think it's good for them. As much as the dogs like their face in the wind. It's like after, I think with anybody, if you've ridden a motorcycle, short trip, great, but it's like you're going more. At least for me, it was like if I was going anything more than a half an hour, then. It's like screw that. It's like your eyes become. They feel like freaking loofah sponges by the time you're.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Like,
I've only ridden a scooter
Good deal.
around town, and that can get up to 40 if I'm going down 26. Right.
Yes. See, and even that, like I've looked at some around, and then my wife was like, nope. I'm like, come on, it's I was looking at those little e-bikes now, and our neighbor has one. I've taken around the block
those
a couple
are fun.
times, and it's like I love that thing, man. It's a bike when you want it to be a bike, and you just have to flip the switch, and I think it does like 35. On a full charge, and I'm like, that's perfect. Like you could, and especially around here. I mean, there's there's what, 3 streets in Bismarck that are more than 35, and
right.
And getting around, we're still a 5-10 minute town most of the time, and it's like, if I could go that route, I think I would, but we'll see. We'll see what maybe next summer I can finally convince her.
If I was going to think about my cars, I would have to sit down for like hours making a list. Mm-hmm. I've gone through so many, but not as comical. Like they just go out here and there, but yeah, no fires, no rabbits.
No.
No crazy police chases or anything.
Right. That's how it should be. I mean, if you can get
if you're going to go out, man, go out in a blaze of glory.
Right. I mean, at least it's like I just laugh because it's like growing up, my dad was always it's like, Jesus Christ, you're so goddamn hard on all the equipment, and but he was one of those. It's like he had his what was it, an 80 in the 80s? He had an old Jeep Eagle or AMC Eagle. And that thing was awesome. That thing was a beast. And, but he was one of those that would do, 53 and a 55 and back when, but then at the same time, his 2 cars he had 3, in, the 29 years before he had passed. So,
wow.
And it was like, he had that Eagle and then he switched to it was like a 80, I want to say it was like an 89 or a 90 Dodge Dakota. Just the tiny little, like
those little pickups,
baby pickup. And then we always laugh because it's like pretty much, in high school, like I could not drive that truck. Like I could not physically
fit in there.
Yeah, it was like, well, how are you doing this? And then we had that Ram, and then that was one of our farm ranch trucks. And then, but outside of that, even our farm and ranch stuff, it's like our newest truck up there is a 73. Outside of that,
cool.
That Dodge, and I remember that was like a big deal getting that, of just like, oh, like we're finally getting a modern, something with a tape player, and it had the Alpine, the Dodge, whatever, Alpine Deluxe, whatever cassette deck in it. And
cool.
So I was like, and driving that, and then, but yeah, his little Dodge Dakota, that thing went everywhere, and then it was like he babied that thing, and now it's always his thing, and it's just like, if you take care of it, it'll take care of you. And then it's like, there's me calling every other urge, it seemed like every few months I'm like,
Jesus.
Like, hey, guess what? But no, that's my goal now. It's like, I got a 73 F-250 sitting up on the hillside up there, and I want to, I had it running about 7 years ago, and then, haven't had much time or money to put into it. But and then the biggest thing, it just sucks because it's like I would gladly go back to that thing, but it's like there's no, off-street parking here in town is a bitch. And then, I feel like a truck like that, you end up, knowing my luck, I'd be flying down 26th Street and everything. It's like that clutch. And I remember that was the pickup I learned how to drive clutch on when I was a kid. And when it's like you had to like stand up.
Oh, right.
Force the clutch all the way down, and it's like first, second, crank, die. First, second, crank, die. And then, and then for us, it was always I remember my grandpa, when I was, I don't know, I must have been 7, 8 years old. And then that 73 had a big water tank. That was our spray unit truck. And then more or less, you'd park it at the bottom of a hill and, okay, your turn. And then you had to get up the hill. Like, here's how you're going to learn how to drive clutch.
Yeah.
Here's, and 2 hours later.
You're 10 feet.
Or you're, 100 feet back. From,
of course.
It's like, okay, yep, I got the clutch. Okay, I'm rolling. Okay, get in first. You're either spinning your tires or you're killing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like, you got to take it easy. You got to do that. And then our other thing was, I remember my cousin and I, when we were probably 12, 13, our grandparents' farm in Minot, and they had, the burn pit, the garbage pit. And it was, I don't know, maybe a quarter mile, half mile road, if that, gravel road off their property, going back a ways. And he would back up to that. And then it was like, okay, put it in reverse. And it's like, okay, get this to the garbage pit. Mm-hmm. And to teach us, like, how to drive. And then if we had like the little grass trailer on it, and it's like, fuck, I never made it to the end. It's just like, how fucking hard is it to? It's like, get the grass to the dumpster. That's all I gotta do. It's like, how are you made? And it was comical, absolutely comical. Of like, I love, and I have all the appreciation in the world for people that can trailer and that can properly, put boats in and things like that.
Right.
Because I sure as hell can't. And even then, it was just like, it's like, you're lined up. You literally don't have to move the steering wheel. Just put it in reverse and give it gas. Don't move the steering wheel.
Move
like you are, it's a 2-line gravel road. Like, you're in the ruts. You can't screw this up, but about every 10 feet or you could never get it to, to actually stay straight going backwards. And then it was just like, well, okay. I'll, and well, thankfully I've avoided, I've never owned a boat. I've never,
I got a pop-up camper that we got. And it's kind of a bitch to park. I know I'll get it one of these days, but I find myself like trying, especially at a campground. And then I can't quite get it in the spot because it keeps going left or right. And I'm like fucking getting frustrated. And then somebody else is pulling up to keep going, but I'm taking up the road. So I'm like, fuck it. And I just pull back out and I go all the way around the campground. And I go back to the spot and I try again. And then I'm like, fuck it. I'm going to detach it and push it in.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. It's just like, they should have little Autobots. And why nobody,
right.
Like you'd think these days, and maybe they do. Maybe it's it's sitting in Japan or something. But I've always wondered that of like, if you could have a cool little motorized, whatever, a little 4-wheel, dirt wheel, like literally, it's like you could set it, right behind your hitch, pull your trailer, set it on that, and just let it put it in place for you. Or I don't know, we got $1 trillion waiting to be made, but it was like, here you go. You could have a little GPS sensor on it, and you can just, clip it in or, remote it with your phone and just, okay, I'm standing here staring at the trailer. I know it's going left or going right.
I'll invest.
I got my first guitar when I was 13. I didn't actually start playing it until I was probably over, 21, 22. Did the high school band. We had a cool, had a rock band in high school. Few chords here and there. Actually, it was, I think you've had Nolan on this show, Nolan Falcon. And he was a buddy of mine back then. And my big thing was everybody was so much goddamn better than me. And it just kind of deterred me from like, where it's like I had a buddy, he's still here in town, but I remember like, 8th grade, 9th grade, he's playing Yngwie Malmsteen. He's playing Satriani. He's playing, it was like, oh, that's what a guitar can do. And then there's me going, I can do a G and a C, I can, and I'm still doing that, 30 years later. But had been, guitar came secondary. I had always been singing. I was a swing choir kid throughout middle school and in high school. And I did, I was a choir and did the all city Christmas concerts, things like that. And had always been, since I was a little kid, music was always huge. My grandma Minot, she was a great piano player. My Uncle Alan was a phenomenal piano player. His daughter, my cousin, she was awesome, as when we were kids. And my grandpa was a barbershop singer. And so he was the note accords, the Minot note accords. And so growing up around that stuff, and hearing them and music was always big in our house. And it was always, I was really the only one that adopted instruments, but between, just music, there's music every day. We were that kind of household, there's always records playing, there's always tapes playing, there's always music playing. And, so I absorbed a lot of that growing up. And then, after high school, it wasn't until it was about 2005, after all the fun vehicle debacles and all that, life changes and things like that. And I just finally, I hit that point. I had been playing enough and writing enough. That's when I'd started Graveyard Blues Productions, or the Graveyard Blues Project was what it originally was, and then turned into Productions. Doing shows in Minneapolis, And that's more or less when I got that bug to just hit the road. And I was like, I felt like I had enough material, you know, I could play 2-3 hours worth of stuff.
Damn. Yeah, that's plenty.
Felt good, you know, asking to get paid for gigs, and, you know, did the tour, did the van life, and off and on, you know, pretty much 2005 until I moved back here, you know, beginning in 2010, and just bounced around and just kind of, it was like, I hit that road of, or I don't want to say, I hit that crossroads, you know, of like, we had amazing friends, or still have amazing friends, and seeing what so many people were doing, and the beginning really of, you know, social media, like, and we, like many, you know, in that late 2000s, or rather, you know, 2010s, I guess, or whatever, what do you say? Early 2000s. You know, when Facebook wasn't even a thing yet. It was still MySpace,
right?
And Reverb Nation and things like that. And those tools became available to find venues and to find other artists and, you know, people you had never heard of. And I was very grateful and thankful. I met with a ton of different people from different places, and more or less just, got in the van and just like, you know what, fuck it, let's roll. And, you know, put on some miles, and, you know, some nights it was sandwiches and, you know, conversations with bartenders, and other nights it's like, hey, we could actually make a few bucks, and, you know, things have drastically changed since then, but it was, for me, it's what I needed, you know, it's what I needed to do. And I've always said, and still am, you know, I was broke but happy. And it was like, I was doing what I wanted to do. And so I was bouncing back and forth, you know, Minneapolis was still home base. And then I was doing a monthly series there. At one of the bars, which we ended up running for almost 7 years, of doing a monthly music showcase there. And so I'd book those, and a lot of people, you know, came and went, and it was just a great experience. And bouncing between there, the Minnesota music scene and the North Dakota music scene were so drastically different.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was a lot of, I don't want to say, you know, there was a lot of struggle, but the thing there was that there was options, and it was always the struggle was there, but the rejection wasn't, if I could say that correctly, you know, because it was like, you know, you could find a sandwich gig, I'll call them, you know, it was like, you could find, I'd go and do a 5 to 7 dinner gig somewhere on a Tuesday, and then you could go, and there's enough venues and enough, you know, between banquets and whatever else, you know, once you start getting your name out there a little bit. And it was like, I was not having problems staying busy with it. And, you know, and then when things changed, and after my dad died, and I came back here, you know, and started reconnecting with all the Bismarck kids, and a lot of us from high school and stuff like that. And I think, man, if I recall, was that 2010, 2011, I played with you guys at, where were we? Armies, what is now Sidelines.
Yeah.
We did that backroom show there.
Yeah.
We did the show out at U Mary. I remember we did a Youth Works event out there. A few of those, you know, and things like that. And it was just like, hey, okay, let's get this rolling. And you know, then I got involved here with the, you know, with Urban Harvest, you know, the Downtown Street Fair, Art and Wine Walk, things like that. And it's kind of crazy. It's like, it'll have been 15 years back here already. And, you know, it's slowed down a bit, but it's a lot, you know, the scene here has changed again. You know, we go through the waves, and we go through the, you know, like right now it's just like, this year's been pretty quiet. This is my first time in a while of like, you know, I've only booked a handful of gigs for this summer and things like that. But it's been my job the last few years. I'm on the road most of the summer. I work in schools and stuff. So it's kind of tougher to, you know, find those, you know, a Tuesday night or a Thursday night gig gets a little harder now. But yeah, it has been it's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun. And it's like, we were talking earlier, you know, it's like, I don't know, the passion hasn't gone away. You know, the motivation is maybe faded a little bit, but I totally get that. But the passion is still there. And going back, that was being around great musicians and family and things like that, of like, just getting out and doing it. And I think for anybody, is like, when you finally play your first live show or you finally get paid for your first gig, and I think back of like, okay, you have your good ones and your bad ones, but, I was very grateful for the situations that I was in and the opportunities I was given early on, to have supportive bars, to have supportive listeners and supporters. And the big thing was, the bands and the other singer-songwriters, and that Minnesota scene helped me a lot to believe in myself, I guess, and to not be afraid to, it's like you're going to get rejected, you might send, that's just the way it goes, but
right.
There was those chances where it was, I was happy to have taken them, and the overall outcome has been more than positive. So,
yes,
it's
of
like,
course.
20 years of doing this now.
Like you've never been booed off stage.
No, thankfully not. I did have one. It was funny, and that was a zombie pub crawl in Minneapolis. That was like the first night. I remember that first gig of truly just like, F this, unplugging my guitar, and I felt bad because I still remember we had booked a phenomenal gal. She was, I believe, from Ireland, and I'd worked with her agency, things like that. And she was in town. She was doing a bigger venue that following. I think she was like on a Monday night or a Tuesday night, whatever, at, one of the art centers or something like that. And we had this Saturday night showcase, and I was like, I'd love to have you, whatever. And then that was it was either the first or the second zombie pub crawl for downtown Minneapolis. And so that first year, the venue I was at, it was like, yeah, pub crawl going on, tons of people up and down the street, cool, people stopping in for a beer, cool. Like this is a cool event.
Yeah.
And my music, I tend to be in that darker, manic country kind of stuff on my solo material. So it was like, okay, cool. Like, when I had that show booked and the, calendar crossover, and I remember talking to the owner of just like, okay, like last year was all right. Well, we'll do it again this year. And I had booked, 4 bands for that night. And so we tried to have, essentially, I had 2 harder bands earlier, and then we had an hour break, and then it was going to be me, and then this gal was going to close out the night. And that pub crawl absolutely destroyed downtown, and it was amazing. But as a singer-songwriter, an acoustic dude in a place that's usually, 60 people, 80 people, all of a sudden there's 300, 400 people.
Yeah.
Zombie mode, and it was like, holy Jesus. Like, even like getting on the stage was a struggle, getting anything going, and then you're trying to run sound. And then ultimately it's like, I think I did like 2 or 3 songs, and the place was so loud. And so, even like the sound guy in back is just like he like literally like could not even get his arms to the controller,
Yeah.
Couldn't get his arms. It's just like, he's like looking at me with his arms. He's like, dude, I can't, like, I'm wedged against the wall here. Like, I can't move.
Yeah.
I can't adjust. And then it was just awful. Absolutely awful. It was comical in a sense, but that was the first time. And by like, second, third song, it was like, okay, fuck this. Like,
yeah.
I'm unplugging. Nobody's going to care.
Right.
No
one noticed.
Yeah. No, and then I did feel bad because then the gal and her booking person, they were not impressed. And I felt bad. And ultimately, it's like, we got it settled, but I was like, as a booking guy, as a performer, as everything for that night, it was just like, sorry. So like, that was like my first real just trash can situation, of like, yep, this is the, and then the big thing there was, the difference of, you'd have your contracts, and then like a lot of gigs, it was either, I think we did like a $5 cover or whatever. And it was usually, $1 to the house, $1 per person to each band, type of thing. So, it's like, oh, all right, we've got, 300 plus people in here. We're all going to actually make some money tonight. And then of course, I think the door guy gave up after the first 10 people filed into the place, and it's like we have no possible way of controlling this crowd. There's no way we're going to be able to, wristband and ID, and it is just absolute pandemonium. And it's like, okay, well, and that, we came up with a number, if I remember, of, whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, like, here's the cash I have in my pocket. Like, I was counting on all of us getting paid off the door tonight, and sorry, that's, the bar staff was cool. The owner was cool about ultimately, getting everybody a couple bucks for our time and troubles. But it's like, holy Jesus, that was that was a wake up call on how to handle contracts and how to handle people and how to, and then here it's funny because go from situations like that to, like I've always joked, my biography for North Dakota is going to be called Clapping with Your Arms Crossed. And that's, you come here and it's weird. And it's like, if you're not doing a wedding dance, if you're not doing, a thing like that. Yeah. And it's like, and I still 15 years back here of this market and this, and it still makes me laugh all the time. Cause you'll have people, they're like, okay, we've been singing and playing for, 2-3 hours. Yeah. So like this dude over here hasn't looked away from his phone the whole time. And then he'll be the first one up and, with a $50 or $100 bill in the tip jar. And it's like, you guys are fucking awesome. And it's like, weird? Well, cool. Yeah. Like, oh, okay. Glad.
I talked about that a little bit on the show before where, we'll be up there playing. And then, if there's a few people up front having a good time, fine. But there'll be that guy in the back with his arms crossed the whole time. Even after the show, he'll be like, that was awesome. But like the whole time during, just standing there menacingly, like judging me. It's like, fuck you. I hate that guy.
Right. And is it like, it's that Midwest, not Midwest mentality, but it's definitely funny, to me. And I've had other guys that, we've brought through town before and kind of the same of like, it's like, not to scare you, and when we were doing our songwriters series and stuff like that. And I remember some of our buddies coming out from, East Coast and West Coast, and it's like, hey, just so you're aware, it's like, if they don't clap after a song, so that's just how it goes. Yeah. And, don't let that get to you, because odds are once you're done, then, right. Then somebody might say something.
On the opposite spectrum, what do you have for shows that are very memorable?
Oh man, I would say for around here, we're doing the Belle May, who's the first time. That auditorium to me is one of the coolest, most beautiful venues. Yeah. I encourage any and every band, and I still reach out to other agencies all the time, try to get people here. And but when we got to do that stage for the first time, and for myself, the first time doing it in a non-choir, in a non-school related function, we did that 13 years ago. It was already 13, 14 years ago. And that was probably one of the funnest shows that we've done. And just being in that building and being on that stage just feels good. And it is, I don't want to say like heavenly venue, but just the acoustics in there, the stage setup, the whole auditorium in general. That's up there. I got to do the North Dakota Music Awards, which unfortunately kind of dissolved, but I got to do one of those shows, and that was a really fun.
Okay. I never got to go to those.
And it was that one. I did a solo song one night, and then we finally did last year. It was kind of funny. Ended up as a trio instead of the 5-piece, but we did the state fair. We finally played at the North Dakota State Fair, and we were on the the B stage or whatever. But we had fun, and it was it was hot. It's July in North Dakota. Yeah. And, but our drummer and bassist, we had fun, and it was a cool afternoon gig at the North Dakota State Fair, but. Hey, we did it. We finally, because that's one of those things. Like I've been calling and messaging since I moved back, for 15 years of like, hey, you need country rock, kind of whatever, and it's like, we'd be happy to do it. And then finally, we were convinced though last year that we either got booked on accident or it was like the dude thought he was talking to somebody else.
Yeah, right.
Kind of one of those of
Yep.
like, because we got it. It was just, it was kind of comical, and it's like ultimately it's like we didn't get paid or nothing, and it was like, okay, like the guy that booked us. Cheers to him. I mean, he's an entertainment director or whatever, but that it was kind of we just laughed because that it was like, okay, like are we? Like in my head, I'm like, okay, we're doing this so we can open for who tomorrow,
right?
Like, or who are we opening for tonight, type of thing.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I was of like, all right, we're going to do the grandstand, whatever. I think but then they did the, and I'll try not to diverge too much, but is like the openers, the grandstand openers, and they ended up turning it into, and I haven't seen anything for this year yet if they're doing it again, but they did like the. Not karaoke contest, but the, come vote for your favorite whoever.
Oh, right.
And it was like, well, if you don't live there and you don't, it's like, oh, we'll do this on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, and whoever gets the most votes out of these bands. And I was like, well, who can do that if you don't live up there? It's like I can't take 5 days off or 6 days off of work and just hang out in in another town. In hopes of getting, a Saturday night, 6:00 Saturday gig, it was like, but then this year, ultimately they're, I've reached out to all people again, just nothing. So hopefully I didn't piss anybody off, or they switched agencies or whatever. Cause then I was like looking at their lineup this year, I was like, I think our band would be a pretty good fit for a lot of the performers this year,
right.
in the country realm and things like that. But, man, as far as others go, Farmington, Minnesota, and I'm totally blanking on it, but I got to do their county fair. They had a really cool gazebo stage and stuff like that. And I remember like that was a really fun, memorable, people singing along.
Oh, nice.
And a cool, just at the time, that was like the first like fair show that I had done solo. And then I had another guy that I had done a few shows with. He and I did a duo one night there, but they ended up bringing us back. I ended up there 4 nights in a row, and which was pretty cool because then I was like, oh, here, if you want to, we'll have you on this stage. And then it's like, oh, can you go do the beer garden over here, at 7:00? It's like, sure, let's do it. Let's, and that was like one of the few times where it's like, hey, we had, there was enough crowd response, and then the gal that had booked us, was happy with us, and then to be able to, for it to turn into something else where it's like you go from, oh, I'll play, a 1 hour on a, Monday at 2:00 on the, in between the juggler and the, and the dancing poodles or something, but it's like, but that was a lot of fun, and that was just a cool, just the vibe and the people, and then ultimately the Midwest Music Fest it goes between La Crosse and Winona, Minnesota, and that has been a lot of fun. I did that 2 years in a row, and was part of the inaugural show down there, which I thought was really cool. So if anybody hasn't looked it up, so Midwest Music Fest was or still is, but a big, cool multi-venue, took place between the two towns. It's College, U of M, Winona down there, and then La Crosse, University of La Crosse, right across the river. And they did a 4-day multi-venue wristband event, tons and tons, I think it was, I want to say 60 some bands and
wow,
performers.
Nice.
And so to be a part of that initially was a lot of fun. Funny story, long story short. So my wife and I, that was actually our first road trip together. We had only been together. This is going back, 2011. That was April. So we had been together like a couple months, and she had known, I was a musician and stuff, but like she had never, at the time I was playing a pizza place here in town. I was doing Wednesdays at a pizza place.
Oh, yeah.
and and telling her like, yep, it's like I used to do this full time and tour and whatever, do the hippie van life and all that. And then doing that festival. And it was funny because we took, my mom had a white Lincoln Continental, and we took that car to Minnesota, and we ended up getting pulled over in this whatever town, small town Minnesota, and frickin' whatever, Clyde Crash Cop, whatever you want to call him, man. And it was just like, got me out of the car, got me out of the, got my wife out of the car, looking through my bag, looking through my guitar case, it was just like, and we were just, it was like, why did we get pulled over? Like, what, it was like, what are the, it was just like, well, moving through town a little fast there, it was like, thought we were doing the speed limit, like where was the sign? I was doing 55 and I thought the sign said 45. I slowed down, and like we have here, like you go a lot of our roads, it's like you go 70 and then it's 55 and then and that was one of those. I'm like, okay, like, and it was, it's a 2-lane highway where we were, like, what's like what's going on? And then it's like, gets me out, gets her out of the car. And of course, it's like we'd only been dating for, 2-3 months at the time, it's just like, any drugs in the vehicle, any, it's like, where are you guys going? What are you doing? What's, it's just like, what is happening? And then the funniest thing, because he was talking about, there was some biker rally going on, in whatever county. They were all meeting at some, it was like, in my tie-dye shirt and my, I'm like, I'm clearly going to the biker rally with my acoustic guitar and my, it's like, and then, then we got there and it was a lot of fun, but we still laugh just because it was such a comical situation.
I've had many of those run-ins where the cop is obviously making something up just to pull you over for no reason, just to check,
Yeah, it's like, look in that guitar case, and then I'm telling them, I'm like, well, I'm on my way to do this festival, like, there's going to be a lot of people coming down this road in the next 2-3 days, hopefully, so, you're going to hit your quota, but, it's like, but those darn bikers, and whatever, they're all probably meeting and, wherever in Wisconsin, for a weekend rally in April.
What's in the guitar case?
Yeah.
Guitar?
Yeah, lots and lots of pills. So but that was a lot of fun. And ultimately, I mean, I think, not to sound cheesy, but they're all fun. We've had, and that's the thing. You get a chance to go out and perform for people, good or bad. You got there and you got to perform for people.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a time where I'm like, we shouldn't have done that. You're right. It is cheesy. It is corny, but
ultimately, and for me, I do go back. I guess maybe and it's I would say any of the bad ones were probably self-inflicted. Or got a little too stoned or a little a few too many shots during the it's like I've had those, and anybody that's done the Midwest scene, it's just like, goddamn, I do. I mean, I appreciate it, and it's like I more or less quit drinking. It's been a number of years now, but it's funny, and just like, you will never know your limit of Jägermeister or Fireball or Jack Daniels or tequila, or, it's just like every time you look down, there's another round sitting at, well, you got to do them. You just finish,
We had one of those playing in Minneapolis. When we finished our set, I put my guitar down and I went right back behind the stage, and the door went out to the alley, and I just horfed right in the alley. And it was one of those like concoctions of mixture of liquor and whatever garbage food I was eating.
Yeah.
And other bands at the end of the alley could smell it. It was like, it was the worst. I was so embarrassed too.
But that's the thing, is that it's like you just,
when people put shots like right up on the stage for you, you have to take it.
Yeah. It's like, all right, appreciate it.
You feel like a dick. Be like, no.
And then it's like, and you're doing everything that you shouldn't do when you're drinking hard alcohol or hard liquor. Mm-hmm. And it's like, but it's there. I better do it. Yeah.
And I know, I'm sure we didn't play good, or I didn't play good, at least by the last couple songs.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no, it's like, and I still, my mom used to give me a lot of grief about that, she would get mad because I'd always change songs, and then, with either lyrics or
Oh.
music or whatever.
Yeah.
And I still do that. And it's just, I don't know how my brain functions, whatever. And our band now, that's what we joke. We probably, we have like 5 versions of every song that we do,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
kind of
like,
cool.
but it's like, yeah, my mom, it's just like, that's not what you did last time. That's not, and it's like, oh, you changed this part to this, and then half the day it's not conscious, it's not a conscious decision. It's just like, yeah, that's just how it came out that night. Or, it's like, yeah, a little too much fireballs. I just, verse 4 was first tonight. And then, we forgot the pre-chorus and did the chorus 3 times in a row. And, and that's just how it came out. Or, people wanted, started singing along at the wrong time or the right time. And then it's like, well, yeah, let's just keep that going. And then it's like, all right, never mind the rest of the song. We don't, let's just fade out. Let them sing it out. Okay, cool. You can find me these days pretty much on Facebook, Mike Swenson Music or the Swen Tones. I do still have a Reverb Nation account out there. What is it? Mike Swenson Solo. Although I think they've changed, their website changed the last time I signed in. So it's like, I don't know if it's, I've had my music hosted on that page forever. And somebody just recently told me, they're like, we can't find your whatever song. And so I was like, that website's kind of different, but that's what's still on my business card. ReverbNation.com/Mike Swenson Solo. Yeah, Swen Tones, find us on Facebook. What do we got coming up? Actually, next week we are kicking off the Sibley Park Amphitheater Summer Concert Series down in South Bismarck. And then coming up June 12th will be the Art and Wine Walk downtown. June 13th, I'll be at Gideon's doing a solo or duo for that one. July, you'll find us doing the, holy cow, I've got Gideon's. I think that is July 11th, I want to say. That Friday after, I think it's the 11th. And then July 26th, we'll be back at Laughing Sun. Swen Tones full band will be back at Laughing Sun, celebrating our 16th year.
Oh, wow.
So we're looking forward to that one, and should hopefully be a good time, and weather cooperates, and still working on filling in a few others. But yeah, hit me up online and be happy to see some people and chat with people. Come on out, say hello.
I'll be there. All right. Thanks for coming in, man.
Good deal. Do appreciate it.
We'll talk soon. There'll be a transition right there. And then we'll do the next part.